So first up, we're going to have our next spotlight. One of the things that I think we're focusing on, certainly in platform, and I know Creative England are, is some of the new emerging technologies around immersive content, which is really, really interesting for us. So I want to introduce to you Dan Riley from Spearhead Interactive. And he's going to talk a little bit about some of the work that he does, some of the applications that he uses this technology in, which is quite different and really, really interesting. And I think there'll be lots of questions for you at the end. Certainly from our point of view as filmmakers, from my point of view as a filmmaker, some of the things that we would really like to get into and talk about. So please welcome to the stage, Dan.
Whoops. Or Mark, if he wants to step up. Excellent. It's a good start, isn't it? It's all right, you've just had your lunch. You can wake up now. It's fine. Oh, there we go. Hey, we're there. Excellent. Now we just wait for the power cut. If you say it, it won't happen. Great. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm Dan Riley. I'm the managing director and the founder of a company from Middlesbrough called Spearhead Interactive. And it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting us down. I really appreciate it. A little bit about me to start with. This is going to be a little bit of a different presentation. Normally, it's kind of, this is the technology and this is the applications, this is what we can do. But Steph kind of asked us to tell a little bit more about the story of Spearhead and how we started the business and how we've come to be where we are. So it's a little bit of a different spin. So my background, I graduated in 2007 with a degree in 3D animation and visual effects from Teesside University. And I got employed by them 2 weeks after graduating. Spent 4.5 years in a research and development lab within the virtual worlds industry, where we were looking at how we could solve commercial business challenges using 3D technologies. So this goes all the way back. During that time, I did the whole academic thing. Spoke at international conferences. I've had research papers published on how to create virtual environments and also the psychological implications for students with learning difficulties. So we like to think of this from the technical aspects, also the psychological aspects, and as we moved into the VR space, very much in terms of the physiological aspects of it too. During my time, I evaluated about 300 different platforms and really kind of got a good understanding of kind of the base level technologies and all that building on the degree. So the largest project we worked in D-Lab launched in about 2010. This is a 16 square kilometer virtual business park. Room for 9,000 businesses to communicate, collaborate, connect their supply chains together, showcase their products, do whatever they need to do. In the top right, top left, you'll see the Northern Design Centre. That was up and running in our building, in our virtual environment 2 years before construction was completed. So we're actually able to get people inside there, testing their job roles, communicating again. We did a little bit of work with the automotive sector as well, blowing vehicles up into component parts for visualization, and virtual showrooms is an obvious example of how we could leverage this technology. So if you think Grand Theft Auto for business, you're not too far off in terms of what we created. We actually have an auditorium here as well. The launch of this environment was actually streamed live into the virtual space. So avatars all over the world were logged into the environment, sat in the exhibition center, watching a live video feed of the launch from Teesside. So we think that was the first time that ever happened. So that was all a bit crazy, but a lot of fun. So back in those days, so I got made redundant from that position when the ERDF funding ran out, as is typical with academics. And I set up Spearhead Interactive at front end of 2013. There was no VR industry. The AR industry was very niche. Very few people knew what was going on with it. So we used games engine technology, and we outputted to web and PC, also mobile devices. They were the primary outputs of Spearhead when we first set up the company. We also looked at ways we could leverage micro consoles, things like the Ouya or the NVIDIA Shield. So essentially the little Android boxes. So we could install the same Android apps on mobile devices we could do onto these little consoles. The idea being that any corporate that wanted to protect their application would just be able to preload that onto the box, and then the box just sits in the meeting room within the TV. So we actually found a use case for the Ouya, which we thought was quite good back in the day. So the academic understanding has kind of given us the ability to understand the power and the why alongside this technology, not just the how. And we believe it boils down to 3 main things. Quite simply, by running stuff in 3D, we can convey things to people in a much easier way. We see the world in 3D, we interact with it in 3D, we communicate in 3D. It makes sense for us to start using digital twins of products to convey things to people. By integrating data into these visualizations, we can better understand what's going on within them as well. And by running everything from real time, you can control that, and you can then therefore enable an experience. So for us, it's the power of conveyance, understanding, and experience that really give the 3D technology such power. Now, I'm focusing very much with this presentation on the CGI side of things and bringing 3D models to life, but the same is applicable to 360 film as well. We actually have done two things. One, we've built a virtual 360-degree camera rig that sits inside of our games engines and allows us to create 360-degree footage from within the games engines. But we can also use standard 360 cameras, and we can texture the inside of a sphere with that movie. And that's how we can then export through into VR and also add all the hotspots and the interactive elements that we want to within the overall games engine framework. So there's a way to leverage the content that you guys are producing as filmmakers in 360 or in VR and then make them a little bit more interactive and a little bit more immersive. One of the things, as an aside, I've always wanted to have a chat with Ian Livingston to see how we could do a create your own 360 adventure film. I just think that would be absolutely awesome. Anyway, that's enough for me on that. Not to mention that the technology as well affects oral, visual and kinesthetic learners. So regardless of your learning style or the way that you interact with environments, this technology will have an impact for you. So what we're looking to do with these kinds of tech, increase efficiency and productivity. We operate predominantly within the enterprise space, so solving commercial challenges for clients. But we do a fair bit of work within the education space as well, and also in entertainment. We've worked with everybody from Sesame Street right the way through to nuclear power stations. So it's quite broad in terms of that. But really what we're looking to do is increase efficiency and productivity within organizations, reduce time, reduce costs, and also differentiate from their competition. And the reason that we're doing that is using this technology to enable our clients to explain, justify, train, de-risk, plan, entertain, sell, or test any aspect of their processes or any aspect of their activities and visualize all their processes and data in the context in which they exist, which is the 3D model. So, like I said, we didn't have a VR industry or an AR industry in those days, and people didn't even know this technology existed. We were coming at this from a completely left field angle. So we needed to prove the applications to the markets, and we did that by developing demonstrators back in 2013. So you'll see the really old branding, the really old colors, the where we came from stuff. So we looked at and developed 8 different demos to prove different applications of the technology to different markets. This being affectionately known as Demo 2, our multi-component product visualization demo. So you could assemble and disassemble the 3D plug. You could show us how it's going to work. You get information on the voltages, frequencies, wattages as to whether or not you used an energy saving or a regular light bulb, all of those kinds of things. So again, interactive 3D apps for selling products and tools. We did assembly guides for flat pack furniture, which we still think there's a big need for. But really, well, it's better than the Korean photocopy you get, right? But what we've realized is that our work isn't specific to a particular industry. Our business and what we do is specific to activities within different sectors. What we've got here is a tool that allows us to do an A plus B equals C kind of process, and that's applicable to everything from the consumer flat pack furniture to process and engineering within manufacturing plants, right the way through to construction of bridges and all sorts of other things. So by developing this kind of framework, we can see how it's going to be applied not just to one particular area, but a particular process across multiple sectors. And that's one of the key things as to why we believe that the 3D environment and the foundation level that we build is going to be used by so many people going forwards. Anyway, focus groups as well. Rather than creating 3 prototypes and doing all of this kind of stuff, get one guy to knock up 3 different types of fabric, soften a bottle, put it out there into the wild and let the public vote on which one they want. You haven't created a single prototype, and you know that China prefer number 1 in red, the US prefer number 2 in blue, and the UK prefer number 3 in green. Again, without creating a single prototype, you now have a sales strategy for the next 24 months that allows you to target particular areas. So there's loads of different ways we can just bring CAD to life and increase functionality and include functionality to meet an objective for a client. And again, all on mobile devices. We even started to look at project management, how we could develop an environment where multiple players could be in here accessing documentation, images, videos, social medias, PowerPoints, all of that kind of stuff for any kind of project management activity, building a content management system at the back end and feeding all the information through. It was a bit of an inception demo because we did a project management on the project management software. So we had a 3D model of the space inside the space that was the space. So there you go. You've got to work with what you've got. So essentially, we took these demos out and we networked our asses off. And we just showed this to anybody that would listen and had as many meetings as we could. And at this time, I think there were 2 or 3 of us in the business. And we managed to secure a few clients. We worked with IEVO, who do biometric fingerprint scanners up in the Northeast, and did some user placement guides for them to show how their products work. We've done an event and conferencing tools for the likes of Design It, Build It conference that was in the Biscuit Factory in year 2, but this was for the this was in the Baltic, up in Newcastle. And we did our first augmented reality application, and that was for MPI Offshore, and that was 2013. So we brought their vessels to life and did various other things. We also, at that time, the VR industry had just hit. This was around October 2013. Palmer Luckey had just released the DK1 on the Oculus. So we just did a quick test to see whether or not we could export the on-the-ship version of the augmented reality to that. And we were able to. And MPI promptly forgot about the app that they commissioned and flew us out to Frankfurt to exhibit with them on one of their offshore shows with the full VR stuff. So we were exhibiting VR in 2013 through a headset that looks like a Jumbotron when you stick it close up to your face. But again, great experience. So, there we go. Not sure where the formatting's there, but there you go. Anyway, so we've always tried to look at the step changes in the market and understand what they mean and how far we can take them. So front end of 2014, I sat down and I came up with a theory called the 4 senses of VR. What do we need to integrate in terms of hardware to create an experience that your brain is going to think is 100% real? Now, the world's focused on the headsets, and they give you a great sense of presence, the ability to see these environments. But we also need to be able to move around them without being constrained by the real world. We've all seen the videos of people walking into walls or falling over and doing all that kind of fun stuff. We also need to be able to see ourselves. At the moment, you've got some hand interaction, but it'd be great to be able to look down and see yourself inside of these environments to get a real sense of existence inside of these environments. And then finally, I want to be able to feel this stuff. I want to have a tangible interaction with the virtual space. So we just land grabbed everything we could find. We've invested in over 100 Kickstarters now, and also invested in other technologies that haven't reached that platform. So for presence, we can use either cardboard HMDs, or we can use, mobile devices or PC. For mobile device, you're looking at cardboard headsets, which range from anywhere between £6 a unit to £4.20. Or you can use the Samsung devices and use the Gear VR as well. So that's a nice cost-effective way of releasing your app onto the stores and going from there. In terms of PC, the most popular ones, we're looking at HTC Vive, you're looking at the Oculus Rift, and you're also looking at the Sony PlayStation VR. There's over 350,000 PSVRs, I think, out there now, and a couple of million in terms of the other 2 units as well. But we didn't stop there. We've also invested in things like the Pimax 8K, which is going to give you 4K per eye, and a huge resolutional boost and things like that. And we've also got the FOVE system in-house. That's the first headset that will do retinal tracking. So if you think you're training simulations for work, you can not only see where their head position is, you can see what they were looking at. Without getting too morbid, corporate manslaughter tribunals to be able to show the video and the screen recording of what the guy looked at, 73% of his time was looked at that, we're cool and clear. This technology is really important for that kind of stuff, tracking what the user does in the back end. This is where it gets fun. So we need a sense of movement inside of these spaces. So we've invested in 5 different locomotion devices so far. And these can be run on mobile devices through Bluetooth, or they can be run through USB on PC. They're exactly the same as plugging in a keyboard. So we've got things like the Virtuix Omni. We're lucky enough to have a prototype of those in the office that was delivered by Warner Brothers. That was actually used in the filming for Ready Player One, which we can finally talk about now, now that it's been released. We've got the Cat VR system, which means it gets rid of the ring and you can have Z-axis movement. But by far my favorite is the virtualizer created by our partners over in Austria, Cybereth. And just to give you an idea of a couple of other navigation things before we show you how they work, we've also invested in the Roto VR. That's great from developers' point of view, so they can just sit on the chairs doing their work and then spin around, do what they want to do, and then away you go back to work again. And we've also got the VR Go chair, so that's about £150. It's got a little accelerometer in it, and we've got that working with our VR manufacturing plant, so you just lean forwards and you move forwards, backwards, left and right. These things are really good at reducing motion sickness. That's one of the biggest complaints with VR, the refresh rate. And the reason that's happening is because the inner ear fluid in your ear isn't moving at the same time as what your visual stimulation is. So you're getting confused between what your body's feeling and what your eyes are seeing. So to use a 360 treadmill that has you moving as you would do, it just completely removes all of that. And the experience is a million times better than it currently is. So this is one of Cybereth's employees in Austria walking through one of our VR manufacturing plants. Now, I recently moved house, and it was probably the most depressing, heart-wrenching experience I've had in a number of years. Why I can't walk into an estate agent, scan a QR code, build a Spotify playlist of properties, and jump into one of those? That for me would be the ideal, rather than taking 3 days off work and driving for miles for people that don't even show up. So there you go. At least it would narrow it down. Does it look like Beirut outside? Probably give that one a miss. Anyway, so that's all that sort of stuff. Interaction, we're looking at both camera systems and also infrared and sensor systems as well. So we've looked at camera tracking, so we've got things like the Leap Motion, which is great for putting your hands into these environments and doing those sorts of things. We can also start to look at things like the ZQ. That was built by the team who created the Microsoft Kinect, so that's a really powerful gesture tracking camera that will put you inside of the environments. And then, of course, we are looking at the Kinect as well. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was use 3 Kinect devices and triangulated them. Had a guy in our office, and he was inside of a virtual environment talking to this guy, and they were communicating and collaborating as if they were in the same room, and he was in Paris. So apart from feeling a virtual hug and a handshake, it was pretty much there, interactive whiteboards, all that kind of stuff. So remote collaboration. This stuff isn't 6-12 months away. This is 6-12 months ago. So we're just kind of waiting for the world now. The technologies are there for people to kind of catch up to the potential. So in terms of the sensor tracking, we're looking at things like the perception neuron suit, the Nolo VR, which allows you to do tracking in mobile devices, and we're also looking at things like the Capto Glove and the Glove One to give you a sense of stimulation as well in there as well. And just to show you how powerful these things are, this is a $1,500 US motion tracking system. It will do mocap data, so we could apply the motions to characters inside the environments if they're non-playable. But here you can see pretty much every finger moving one-to-one. We can literally do sign language with people the other side of the world in multiplayer with no noticeable loss of latency. So in terms of connecting old people together, in terms of reducing senses of loneliness and all that kind of stuff, this stuff's here and now, as well as obviously using it for more high-end stuff and also media production. So it has multiple uses. The stimulation side of things is still, again, in its infancy, but we invested in a few things that have causal stimulation. So essentially, I've done something, I expect to feel it inside the environment. And the AREG suit, a company called IFTech over in Canada, that has 2 parts. It's a muscle tension system, so just like the Abtronic stuff you used to get, and it also has a 32-point rumble system as well in there. So the idea is you're playing Call of Duty or Battlefield, and you can feel the bullets hit you and that sort of stuff. So just increasing the immersion. We're more kind of if I slip over or whatever. There's also the sub-pack. That uses audio feeds that are coming in from the environment. So we can just plug that in, and whatever audio you put over the environment, you'll be able to feel. And we also have the Tesla suit, or contacts with them. That's still in development, but that's a 96-point precision system. Apparently there's 6 rumble positions on the arse alone. So that one's going to be interesting to try. But the sub-pack's probably one of our favorites. We got that, and the first thing we did was just we felt some Hendrix, which was just the most insane experience ever, just absolutely awesome. So yeah, environmental stimulation. This is where things are a little bit pie in the sky at the moment, but we're looking at things like 360-degree fan systems as well that will kick in and allow you to feel the environments that are coming through. Unfortunately, this isn't a commercially available product, but I wish it was. The Nodulus Rift was created by Ubisoft to market South Park game. Pop that on and press the fart button, and guess what you smell? Of course, we want to use it for things like asphalt and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not too far away from the horrible smells, but olfactory sensations are going to be quite important when it comes to really immersing people inside of environments. So this really lays the foundation for things that we think are going to be massive going forwards. And then with things like 360 audio speakers and stuff as well that change. So if the truck is coming from behind me, I'm going to hear it coming from behind me relative to my position in the treadmill. So we do a little bit, as I mentioned, with the augmented reality side of things. So that was all the VR hardware. This was the Southampton Boat Show in 2014. We were working with MAN engines at the time, and we replaced a 2.5-ton size of a small car marine engine with an A0 piece of paper for them. People were able to pick the tablets up around the metal ring, point it at the plinth, and then the engine would appear full size in front of them as if it was actually there. They got coasters printed, QR code on one side, trigger image on the other, put the coaster above the plinth, the engine jumps from the plinth to the coaster, and they just hand the kids a free engine. Place went nuts. It was awesome to see. Inquiries went up 300%. People were leaving their stand, bearing in mind it's a boat show, not an engine show, and asking Princess and Sunseeker if they did MAN engines in their yachts. They also saved more money in transport and logistics for one engine for one show than the entire commissioning of the whole project. So that was then taken to the Bauma Fair in Germany, Miami Boat Show, and a few others over in China as well. So quite a successful project. But again, this was all using tablet devices. We've also land grabbed and invested in hardware within the AR space as well. Everything from single optic HMDs, and we're really keen to kind of work on the taxonomy of this stuff as well. So this is all monikers that we've kind of come up with just to kind of categorize the sector. So things like the MadGaze and Vuzix, Google Glass 2 or 3.0. We've actually just finished a project with Vuzix within Asda's distribution sorting warehouses for George. So they're now picking up parcels, it's seeing the barcode that's on there, it's bringing up a virtual label that says this is what store it goes to, this is the region that store belongs to, and this is the cage you need to be putting it into, turn around, and then the cage is highlighted. So we anticipated a 30 to 40% increase in productivity, or Asda did within their KPIs and their evaluation of what they thought would be going on. It's led to an entirely new theory that we've been coining the ROX, return on experience. That 30 to 40% increase in productivity, within about 8 weeks of the trial, we got a report that some employees were reporting a 200% increase in productivity, and they've reduced their error margins down from 3% to nothing in the warehouse. And obviously they're dealing with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of packages every single day, so you can imagine how big that is for them. And that's all about, for us, heaven forbid this stuff should be fun. Why would you not want to have something fun to use in work? Why would you as a boss not want to provide your employees with something that's fun for them to use as well? I realize this has to be serious, but there you go. Dual optic HMDs as well, like ODG. Unfortunately, CastAR isn't around anymore, but that was going to be 2 projectors projecting the VR in front of you onto a reflective surface. Primarily reused for D&D, but we saw some quite good commercial applications for that as well. Rear projected HMDs, pieces of plastic that have some mirrors that reflect and refract off your mobile phone screen, so that's about £80 a unit. So again, looking at the cost effective as well as the more advanced. And then speaking of the more advanced, things like panel display HMDs, head-mounted displays, things like the Daiquiri and also the Microsoft HoloLens as well. So by the end of our first year, we were lucky enough to have won a number of awards. 3 months into trading, we were at the Thinking Digital Award, which is, I guess, one of the top 10 tech companies in Europe, or at least those that entered. We won the UKTI Exporting for Growth Prize, and we were listed as one of the top 100 startups in the UK. Now, that was quite an experience. That got us noticed by Accenture, who were working over in Japan, and with the Tokyo Metropolitan Government about bringing companies over into Japan to set up this office and raise the Japanese economy. So we made our first market visit to Japan in September 2014, about a year and a half after we set up the company. And we were there really to talk to governments about international expansion and all of those kinds of things. And again, the naive hat on, we've been trading 18 months, we're now in Japan for international expansion. And I'm trying to sell technology to the Japanese. The irony was not lost. However, we were also able to take advantage of the timing, and we were there with, our partners, Cyberith. I don't know if that video is going to play, but again, it's just me using the treadmill. That was one of their early prototypes. So we supported Cyberith at the Tokyo Game Show in 2014 over there. And of course, the Tokyo Game Show, you can't have a trip to Japan without seeing at least a couple of mech robots that are the size of a house. So that was good fun too. So with Tokyo having the 2020 Olympics, it made sense for us to also then look at Brazil. So in the September, we were in Tokyo. By the November, we were in Rio. So we flew out to Brazil, and we had meetings with the IOC over there. We were lucky enough to be the first people onto the Olympic site after the IOC had done their first check of the build progress. So that was a really exciting experience for us. We also went back to Japan and Brazil in 2015, so there might be some crossover in terms of the images and things like that. But obviously you can see some of the stadiums being constructed and the car park and the media offices, which are way over in the side of the building. And it was great fun to meet the people there, but I guess one of the things that, of course it's being professional and that kind of stuff, but I want to kind of have this presentation as some takeaways on the journey as well. So yes, you have to be a little bit professional and corporate all the time, but there's no reason why you can't have a little bit of fun every now and again as well. So, you're only there once. Okay. So we've been lucky enough to do quite a bit of international travel. Again, Japan, Brazil. We recently got back from India, where we were speaking on a panel for not the Great Campaign, but a couple of one of the Department of International Trade events. It was fantastic to be over at Createch, and also speaking as a Digital Immersive Technologies panel and summit in Bangalore as well. So we were flown out as well in March to Singapore. This was quite a fun little project that we worked on with National Geographic. Beach House Pictures, who were commissioned by National Geographic to do a TV show called Machine Impossible. We were commissioned to develop essentially an esports game. So if you ever played Breakout, the old paddle ball game, that's one of the retro games, you were essentially the ball. And we motion tracked the ball using 2 cameras, both beside you, and I think you can just about see a camera over on the other side. And you were kicking the ball at the blocks. If the screen registered a hit, the block would disappear, and they were wearing AREG suits, so the other player got an electric shock. So added to the competitive aspect of it. So that was Machine Impossible, and I think we were in one of the episodes of that. Great project, great to be flown out there, and just an amazing experience. So we've grown a little bit since then. We're now a multidisciplinary team of software developers. We have 3D modelers, programmers, animators, digital specialists, those kinds of guys. We've developed over 70 solutions now for clients across 16 different sectors located in 3 different continents. So it's been quite the journey. And obviously, we've made over 65 different emerging hardware investments in technology too. Some of our clients, pretty much within the enterprise space in the Northeast, we're talking about the likes of Wilton Engineering. We also did a Be a Player experience for Middlesbrough Football Club as a mobile app. We've worked within the subsea industry with SMD, MPI Offshore, obviously petrochemical with Exwald. But we've also had some blue chip clients come over to us. We have worked with Accenture on the RBS Six Nations experience a couple of years ago. BAM Nuttall as well with some augmented reality applications, Nat Geo, Unilever, MAN Engines, and the Great Campaign as well. What we do is actually very simple. We take 3D objects, and they can be anything, products, components, plant sites, or cities, and then we're applying animation, data, documentation, functionality, and systems into that CAD data to meet a specific objective for a client. And that can be distributed via PC, or it can be distributed via a mobile device. And then you can leverage different types of technology on the back of that. So the business has grown a bit. We're now split into 3 main areas. We have a consultancy arm where we'll teach people the art of the possible, and we'll run ideation sessions, and we can write white papers and all of those kinds of fun things. We obviously have a full development team that will create the solutions that are scoped up with the clients, and then with our hardware partnerships, we can deploy specific hardware, and we can maximize the impact of whatever the solution is going to be. All the underlying technology is games. No other industry has had as much investment in rendering technologies than the games industry. It makes sense for us to use the best technology that's out there, even if we're still kind of not allowed to use the G word games or the F word fun when we're talking about these kinds of things. But we're like, as I say, best-in-class visuals. You've got military-level security over the top of this stuff. We can comfortably integrate lots of different types of data into these environments and visualize them in different ways. The hardware is affordable. This stuff isn't new. The games industry has been developed for the last 40 years. The processes are in place to create this stuff. This isn't magic and witchcraft, even though it appears to be in a lot of cases. And there's also a lot of functionality that's in the box, things like physics engines and multiplayer that people haven't really leveraged yet, mainly due to budgets and those sorts of things. So what I really want to do is I'm going to jump off stage and actually show you rather than speak at you for this next bit. But what we've spent a lot of time doing is working out how far the rabbit hole goes. What can you do with VR and AR and all those sorts of things? And we've broken it down into 5 different levels, or 3 core areas and then 2 bolt-ons. So we just want visual stuff. I just want to see what my building's going to look like, what my product's going to look like. I want to get a sense of how it exists and how it feels. Then we have experiential data. So I want to run through a process as it exists in the real world. We then move on to functional data. I want to replicate processes that I can't do in the real world, that are completely impossible. And then for the bolt-ons, for all 3 of those aspects, we're looking at the integration of IoT data into 3D environments, and then starting to look at things like AI, machine learning, and blockchain over the top of that 3D data, starting to look at control systems and also automation systems, but again, in context. So the owner of Nissan can pick up a tablet or his phone in the morning, blow his vehicle up into all of its different component parts, look at his stock control system. Anything flashing green is in stock, anything flashing red is out of stock. It's a visual interface to map the health of a process within its facility that you can understand in a matter of seconds rather than reading that report. So let me jump in and run the demonstration. So I'll be over here. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. All right, I'm just going to jump out. This is one of the demos that I was talking about. I probably should have had this preloaded, but away you go. It doesn't take too long to load up. So this was affectionately known as Demo 6 when it loads up. There we go. So I've got 2 of them now. Okay, so you might have noticed the building at the start on the first slide. So that's just loading up. It's worth pointing out as well, like architectural packages like Revit, they're handling gigabytes of data in the majority of cases. The executable for this piece of software is about 11 megabytes. So we can hugely reduce the amount of data that's coming through. So this is running on a Asus netbook from about 3 years ago, so it's nothing major in terms of its specs, which is why it's slightly juddery. I was hoping to bring down a bigger PC, but away you go. So this is the building, and as you can see, the visual stuff is there. This model was created by one of our developers, as I say, in 2013, in about 10 weeks. And we used nothing but 2D floor plans and reference photos for this. So we're walking around the building, scanning the objects, all of that sort of stuff. And everything is in here. Every fire extinguisher, smoke alarm, security camera, everything. But the entire building's experiential as well. It's all alive. The rotating door will work. I can come in here and I can click on our disable door button. That's time to the real world. So before I've even put a spade in the ground for the foundations, I can already do my security or my disability audit. All of the doors are animated, and all of the spaces contain the right equipment. So we have gents' toilets, for anybody that's interested. The mystical world that is. We can go in the ladies as well if you like, but we also have a fully working lift inside of here too. So if I just click on here, doors are going to open, and we can come up here and we can start to interact. So we can use the on-screen controls that have just popped up, but of course, if I can click on there we go. I can use the actual buttons that are on the lift themselves. That lift is now moving up the building at the correct speed, all of that kind of fun stuff. So now we're on the second floor. We see construction as a three-stage process: pre-construction visualization, project management during, facilities management post. You can begin to see where this would kick in from the pre-construction visualization and maybe a little bit of the project management. But we've also built in functionality into this. We have our own Spearhead start bar. Again, what are corporates familiar with? How do we start to copy some of that? We have the ability to develop the functionality through the use of interrogation of the building across all of its architecture, its services, and its fittings and fixtures. So if I'm coming in as a structural engineer and I want to look at the clash point between the heating system and the girders, for example, I'm going to make my exterior walls semi-transparent, turn off my brickwork, turn off my ceilings, make my floor semi-transparent, and highlight my girders. So that's your functional applications that you can't do in the real world, and there's all my pipe work in my building. And we can obviously still navigate and do what we want to do and all that kind of fun stuff as well. So that's that. In terms of little bits of extra stuff, we have a nice little rotation animation, and we can set the building up in any combination that we want live from here. So, for example, if we want to, I don't know, let's turn off the elevator for whatever reason, we can do that as well. And it's all updated and it comes through live. Now, the interesting thing about this stuff is that for anybody that's doing the marketing stuff, just line the camera up, press Alt Print Screen, there's my image for my marketing material. Use Snagit, there's my marketing video. So commissioning this kind of stuff means that you don't have a marketing budget requirement for your renders or your videos. So it's looking at ways in which we can replicate or augment processes that people go through in order to save them more money. And one of the biggest challenges we have is getting people to sign off on the real-time model. Unfortunately, models coming through from Revit and those kinds of packages, SolidWorks, AutoCAD, Navisworks, Tekla, they're too data heavy to be rendered in real time at this kind of level. So we typically have an either rebuild process or an optimization process we need to go through for the CAD. So what we've done is we've looked at processes that cost people a lot of money. Things like a disability audit. It's about 50 grand in a building like this to do a disability audit. So what we can do in here is we can drop the camera height down from 6'1" to 4'2" and extend the proximity box of the character to the width of a wheelchair. So now, assuming that my design is correct, and bearing in mind it was done off floor plans, we can test the building. If I can't get through these doors in this setup, I'm not going to be able to do it in the real world, therefore I've got a real issue with my building, again, pre-construction. And one of the other interesting things we can do is we can play around with filters. Now I'm visually impaired. We can start to look and build in functionality that allow you to replicate the way that other people will experience what you're doing, whether they're visually impaired, whether it's a black and white filter for people with dementia, and you're walking around a care home and wondering whether Doris is bumping into the bed because she's got dementia, or whether it's because the bed sheets are clashing with the carpets. So by testing the building relative to the users, we can have a better sense of empathy, particularly within VR. A slight aside, I'm conscious of time here as well, but we developed what we believe is the world's first VR crime scene reconstruction used to solve a court case. And we used the tachographic information from the forensic investigators, and we built camera positions for the vehicles that were involved in this fatal road traffic collision. Putting the HTC Vive on and being sat in the van and knowing that that was the last thing that guy ever saw was an incredibly profound experience. So yeah, empathizing with people is something that's quite important. But getting back to this, those 2 bits of functionality for us to put in are just number changes in the engine and an export to a button. You're looking about £150. That then saves $49,850 on your disability audit, which means you can then fund the cost of the development. We then say, right, well, what's the next thing that costs you guys a load of money? And we'll start to build systems and functionality from there until we've got something that's all singing and all dancing for them. I guess the ultimate goal is to build a package like The Sims, where you can build it yourself, customize it yourself, press a button and view it in VR, all of that kind of stuff. But at the moment, the whole industry is pretty much bespoke. So that kind of gives you an idea of sort of what we've been doing in I guess, the construction space. And I'll just quickly jump back to the presentation. I'm almost done, I promise. So, there we go. Brilliant. So scalability. This is a new kind of slide and a new sort of area that I've been working on. So it's not 100% there yet, but hopefully you can follow my logic with this. Everything we do starts off with a 3D model. That 3D model is a component or material, it's a product, it's a piece of plant or equipment. We can even start to visualize supply chains if needs be through process flow maps in 3D and things like that. If we stay with construction, the project starts with conception and it ends in demolition. And there will be processes along that pipeline that use the objects again and again and again, potentially. Every single aspect of that has processes, and we can develop visual, experiential, and functional solutions for every single one of those processes that use every single asset within that environment. And we can do that adding operational data, so linking in IoT. So in the previous example, having a light sensor into every single light in the building, it's either on or off, true or false statement to a database. Is the light on? Give it a state for on. Is the light off? Give it a state for off. Rather than a dashboard telling you your lighting is 83% efficient that you can do nothing with other than know it, you can see the guy on the 3rd floor never turns his lights off. The innovation to refine that process and increase that 82% might be as simple as an A4 piece of paper next to his door to turn his lights off. So that's where we're coming at it from the IoT. And when you start thinking about heating, lighting, pressure, motion, air quality, Industry 4.0, factories of the future, smart cities, that's where this stuff for us is really kind of game-changing, we think. And then finally, when we start to put analytical stuff over the top, we're then able to correlate data from different systems. So for example, I can pull in information from the National Grid for electricity prices. I can pull in information from the Met Office for weather data, customer order systems, stock control, ERP, MRP systems. So if I'm doing predictive maintenance, for example, my system in a matter of seconds, rather than a human spending days trying to correlate this, will tell me when the best time to repair all my equipment is going to be, or to change the oil, based on what stock I've got, based on what orders we've got coming in, based on the staff that's coming in, based on the electricity prices it's going to cost for us, all that stuff. So again, we see the democratization of systems and the integration of systems through IoT and through AI and blockchain as being quite important going forwards. But the ultimate goal is to, again, explain, justify, train, de-risk, plan, entertain, sell, or test any aspect of any of these processes across the entire life cycle of whatever the project is that you're working on. So there's quite a few different applications we can think of for how we apply this to different sectors. So what's next for us? Well, we'll be continuing to develop bespoke stuff. And obviously people coming to us with their own ideas and helping them work through that and how we would visualize that. We'll also be continuing to reinvest our revenues. Spearhead as well is entirely self-funded. We have no external financing, no investors in the business. Everything we've done and achieved has been through commercial revenue, which means it's late nights for, for the whole team majority of the time. But we're looking to, again, prove the applications to the markets. And one of the recent things we've done is a VR manufacturing plant. So we've built an environment where rather than 2 lucky kids getting to sweep the floor and make tea and coffee in JCB, we can actually get them learning how to fabricate inside of a virtual manufacturing plant with no raw material costs, no plant or productivity downtime, no health and safety concerns, and also decreasing CO2 emissions, and if we want to, also keeping more money in the regional economy because we aren't flying people up to Aberdeen, and we're able to spend more in hotels and restaurants in the local area. The other things we're doing is we're starting to productize. This is a very early image of one of the products we expect to be launching in the next 8 to 10 weeks. And that is a mobile virtual reality sensory space for kids with autism. So rather than having to travel to a physical location and rather than having to get people to spend tens of thousands of pounds on these spaces, $199 download, there's my sensory space, cardboard VR headset in my pocket, away you go. So yeah, just in terms of takeaways for the journey that we've been on, just as the final slide, there's a few things I'm not going to read at you, but for really it's a case of working hard, do what you love as well. Just say yes to as much as you can. You never know where it'll lead to. And then also, again, be professional, but don't take it too seriously, and staying humble. That's probably one of the most important things. Focus on the reasons why you're doing what you're doing, not what happens as a byproduct of doing that. And then again, commitment, dedication, understanding to your markets and sectors. That's what's going to get you where you need to be. So that's it from me. Thank you so much again to Steph and the rest of the team. It's been a pleasure to sort of give you an insight into the journey that we've been on over the past 5 and a bit years. Social media links are down there if you'd like to follow us for the next 5, 10, and hopefully even longer. Thank you so much again.
Wonderful, Dan. Thank you very much.